For this week's edition of Nosebleed Radio, we have the second installment in our Best of Nosebleed Radio series. This episode includes our interviews with Carrington Harrison, TJ Moe, and Bob Fescoe. We touch on all kinds of sports with these guys. Next week, the gang should be all back together for a new live episode of Nosebleed Radio with some new audio equipment, too, so hopefully we sound nice and sharp. Thanks to Paisans Pizzeria for bringing you this episode and all of our future episodes that really helped us out here with the new setup we got. So without further ado, let's roll the music.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?
Welcome to Nosebleed Radio, presented by Paisans Pizzeria in Omaha. Here's your host, Tucker Franklin.
We're here with Carrington Harrison of 610 Sports. Carrington, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good. I appreciate you guys having me on.
Hey, no problem. You got a new podcast episode out from Stick to Sports. You got Dwayne Bowe on.
Yeah, he and I had a mutual friend. So he was doing like the kind of media rounds last week. Whenever he was here in Kansas City, he was here for a YMCA Play 60 event. Dwayne Bowe's got like a pretty interesting story. Grew up in Miami, grew up in a kind of tough environment. Didn't start playing football until his junior year of high school. Turned out to be a pretty phenomenal football player.
Yeah.
Got recruited by LSU. We kind of talked about that. We talked about his career with the Chiefs. He told this pretty funny story about the first thing he bought was a Bentley when he got his NFL check and how he parked in the handicap spot and Scott Pioli told him to move the car. So, he told a lot of cool stories. I definitely would suggest people to check it out. And we kind of talked about the music thing, too. He's a rapper now, and he was telling a story of how the Migos used to live with them before they got big and how he went on how he went on tour with Lil Wayne when he was 19 years old. Like I can't imagine being around Lil Wayne at the height of his career, and I'm 19. Like
that's wild.
Just sounds like it was a lot of debauchery happening around Wayne.
I can imagine, for sure.
You're a big rap fan. We've seen it on Twitter. What do you think of that new J. Cole album?
I like it. The first time I went through it, I gave it like a 6.5. Kind of listening to it more. I probably like a little bit more of the songs. Like I like Kevin's Heart more now that I've heard it a couple more times than I did the first time I heard it. I like Motivate more now than I heard it the first couple of times. That was a little better than at least it was the first listen through. I'd probably give it like a 7.5. J. Cole's kind of frustrating to me because I think J. Cole's an amazing rapper. I just don't know if I remember there was a time where it was Drake, Kendrick, and Cole, and like they were all kind of at the same tier because they were all kind of starting their careers at the same time. It's pretty obvious to me now that Drake and Kendrick have like really pushed themselves at a much farther pace than what Cole is, and I think Cole, like, I don't think he allows himself to be in that tier. He's like a souped up version of Wale.
Yeah, it's very true. One of the albums he has about 2014 Forest Hills Drive is still a banger. Like I still listen to that to this day.
Yeah, no, I like Forest Hill Drive. I think the problem, I don't know if it's necessarily a problem, and it's all art, so it's all subjective, is I think he saw that formula people would subscribe to, and he's never really gotten away from that formula.
Yeah,
he's made Forest Hill Drive now 3 straight albums. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true.
What makes For Your Eyes Only that much different than Forest Hills? It's the same concept. What makes KOD much different than Forest Hill Drives? It's just, do you like X song different than that? But it's not. And the theme is different, but the whole philosophy of I'm going to have my in-house producers, it's the same formula every time. It's obviously working. Cole had a really successful launch and a release, and the album's been well received. I was actually listening to, like, the night it came out, when I was driving home, because I listened to it at my friend's house, and I was listening to some old Cole, and I was listening like Power Trip and Nobody's Perfect, and I was thinking to myself of, how can J. Cole hear these songs and perform these songs and see how people respond to them and then think, I never want to make a song like this again?
Yeah.
So now you came up with a little bit ago that Kanye Madness bracket. Tell us about how that went down and what you thought of it.
I thought it was pretty cool. I guess the long story short of how it came together was I was in the car and I was kind of going through like a 2000s like random shuffle on Apple Music.
Oh yeah.
And I went to T-Pain. I was kind of listening to a lot of his stuff, and then Good Life came on, and something kind of hit me, and I was like, man, I haven't heard College Dropout in a while. So I went to College Dropout, and I was listening to Spaceships, And I was thinking to myself, I was like, man, Spaceships will probably be somebody's favorite Kanye West song. And I was like, man, I should just do a bracket to figure out, what people's favorite Kanye song is, because, different music, and like we were talking about, music is pretty subjective.
Mm-hmm.
So I texted one of my really good friends the idea. He was like, man, let's do it. And I was like, cool. I sent a tweet out just to kind of get people's feelers of if they even liked the idea and if they thought it was a good idea. And it, the tweet was pretty popular on my timeline. A lot of people were like, yeah, you should actually do it. Together, 11-person committee, kind of similar to the NCAA tournament, and we worked together to kind of seed it and how we thought the song should be ranked. And it obviously was pretty well received. So it was pretty cool to see people's appreciation of something that we all worked hard on to do. And I said this in like a couple other interviews. It's been a really rewarding feeling of, I don't know if many people can say that they did something that the internet seemed to appreciate, and you can say like set a trend on the internet. Like a lot of people did brackets after that, and I do think that our bracket and the success of it kind of gave people the right mind of, hey, I want to do a bracket about X idea.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a really cool thing.
I know it definitely got us inspired because we did an MLB hat bracket to decide what the best bracket or what the best hat in the MLB was. So we did one of those.
Who did you guys pick?
The Florida Marlins ended up winning it. The old school, the teal one. I know.
The Florida Marlins hat?
Yeah.
Oh, my
garbage.
goodness.
Blame Twitter.
If we're going classic, I'd probably say the Red Sox hat is like a little cooler than the Yankee hat. New school hat, I really like the Angels uniforms.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm not the biggest Red fan, but I really like the Angels uniforms a whole lot. I like their hat. That's probably the one I would vote for, but no, that's actually a pretty cool idea. I like that.
Yeah, it was nice.
Keeping on the topic of MLB there, what did you think of Salvi's return last night?
Man, I think Salvi is just, when you talk about just like sheer like physical freaks.
Yeah.
Man, Salvi went down March 28th, and they said 4 to 6 weeks, and I always say with injuries, I always tend to be more on the later side than the earlier side, especially when it's something like a knee injury. It's not like it's 7 to 10 days, or if you come back in 8 days opposed to 10, it's like no harm, no foul. I mean, 2 weeks is, 11 games, 12 games. So for him to come back at I would say the most optimistic point of it, and I think if we look at how Salvi was rehabbing, Salvi could have came back last week, really. If he really, really wanted to, he could have came back last week. He hit a home run in Lorenzo Cain's return. I mean, I know they ended up losing, but this is going to be a season that doesn't have a lot of really good moments. That was a good moment yesterday.
Right.
Do you think they let him carry his own luggage anymore, or do you think they have someone else do that for him now?
I actually saw Sam Mellinger from the Kansas City Star.
Right.
He tweeted it, that he actually is still carrying his luggage. I would maybe give that to somebody else. I feel like you got some equipment guys that can probably handle that light work for you. Like, I remember when I was an intern for Nick Wright, I knew what one of my job responsibility was. Nick would give me his debit card, and one of my job responsibilities every day was to go to Chipotle. Like, I just knew that was part of the. Like, I knew that was part of it. Like, I remember, Nick didn't have to. He had to write it down. I knew exactly what the order was. So, it became ingrained in my mind. Like, if I was a equipment manager for the Royals, part of my new daily responsibility needs to be, hey, yo, Salvi, let me get that for you.
Right. That lineup last night for the Royals, I think, is the best lineup we're going to get.
Yeah, I mean, I would say aside from Jorge Bonifacio, I mean, that's the lineup you thought they were going to have at opening day. Yeah, I mean, I think the Royals aren't going to score a whole lot. Like, that's just not going to be something that they end up doing a lot this season. So, I mean, I think you just have to be realistic about your expectations of what kind of offense they're going to put together. And I think that yesterday's lineup, I would agree with you. Aside from Jorge Bonifacio, that is the best lineup they can put together.
Now, do you think we should have spent the money to keep Moustakas, or do you think we should have cut our ties there and try to save our money, maybe start a rebuilding team this year? It was kind of confusing offseason.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really spend a whole lot of money on Mike Moustakas. I mean, my big thing has kind of been this offseason is there's no reason why Cheslor Cuthbert shouldn't get 500 ABs. There's no reason why Jorge Bonifacio gets back. He shouldn't play every day. There's no reason for Jorge Soler not to play every day. So, I mean, and let's be honest, it's not like the Royals have a lot of young, talented guys that are being blocked right now. Like, that would be one thing if they thought Hunter Dozier was ready to play first base, and there's no reason to sign Lucas Duda. But they've given you no reason to think that he can play first base, at least not right now. So I don't know if the signing of Mike Moustakas for 1 year, $6.5 million is really stopping the Royals from doing anything, and he's not blocking someone. Like, it's not like every day I'm thinking, man, X should be playing at third base over Mike Moustakas.
And once they had the signings of Duda and Jay, and along with Moustakas, I just immediately thought they were going to be trade bait for the trade deadline. Do you think that'll happen?
Yeah, I do think that's going to happen. I think that's the best case scenario. Like, I think the first half of the season clearly needs to be Moose, Duda, Jay, and Kelvin Herrera need to have good first halves of the seasons, and maybe even Danny Duffy to try to trade those guys at the trade deadline. Like, I've been talking about this on our show. Man, the Royals have a deficiency of talented players between 25 and 28. There's not that many guys on the team like Whit Merrifield. I know he just recently popped up. Now, Whit Merrifield's 29 years old.
Ooh.
Like, the Royals need to do a good job of finding players in that prime. When they won the World Series, then they had 6 really talented players between 25 and 28, or maybe 25 to 29 if you want to move it out one more year. And the Royals don't have that right now. So priority number 1 over the next 2 years needs to be, we got to find some guys that in that athletic prime that most athletes hit, we got to find guys that are ready to play.
What do you think this year? Like, how many wins do you think the Royals will get this year?
I think 75 is a very, very optimistic
I was going to
place
say, that's almost pretty generous.
Yeah, I mean, I just, this team's not good.
Yeah.
Like, if I ask you, what do they do incredibly well, I guess you could say starting pitching, but it's not like their starting pitching is incredibly dynamic. Their bullpen's weak. Their offense is average, probably at best. And we'll see. Like, we'll get hot. We'll see how Salvi does. We'll see if Gordon can turn things around. They're just going to take a lot of lumps this season. So, yeah, I mean, 75 to me is probably optimistic. It's probably closer to the 69 to 73 range.
Nice. Now, Meek Mill got released from jail yesterday. Does that give Philly an unfair advantage in the playoffs?
I mean, yesterday, it was kind of obvious they were going to win yesterday.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could bet against them yesterday.
It was pretty bumping.
Yeah, I don't know if many people know the story about Meek Mill. It's kind of a long story, so I don't really want to get into the whole thing of it on your best podcast. And people should really read, I think, why it was such a big deal that he was free. It's not like Meek committed some criminal act and that's why he was out and it was just internet justice to try to get him out. Like, Meek Mill was in jail for a probation violation for popping a wheelie. That's why Meek Mill was in jail. And the judge, they had a background. So Meek had been on probation since he was 19, 20 years old. They had just had so many run-ins with each other. It was clear that this judge, in my opinion, has a personal vendetta against Meek Mill. So she was the only person that could reverse letting him out. So, I mean, Jay-Z was on his behalf. Beyonce's been on his behalf. The Patriots owner, Robert Kraft, was on his behalf. The owner of the Sixers. Like, a lot of people were in the push of, hey, free Meek Mill. So, I mean, at some point it was going to happen. I'm happy it happened yesterday. I'm happy you got a chance to be at the game. People were kind of joking on Twitter. I was talking to one of my good friends about it. I can't imagine I was in jail for 5 months like Meek was, and my first place I go isn't home.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Like, the first place I go was at home. Now, I kind of understand in that situation. I mean, I would say that the Sixers owner was probably the biggest reason on why it happened maybe as quickly as it did, just because he's in Philadelphia. He's probably the richest person in the state, certainly a lot of political connections if you're a billionaire owner. So, I mean, he was working pretty tireless behind the scenes. So I think if he tells them, hey, we really want you to be at the game, not saying that Meek has a responsibility to be at the game, but I could understand why, hey, this person is the biggest reason why I'm out of this situation. The city wants to see me. It's a big deal that I'm home. I'm going to go to the game.
Do you think Meek Mill has one of the best release from jail photos? I think he has another one out now. He has the first one that came out when he was released from jail. It's like him running around the corner. Now he has the other one with his phone out while looking at the TV camera.
Oh, I actually haven't even seen that picture. I've seen like a couple of the videos. Like, I saw someone ask him what kind of day it was, and he said today was a good day. Everybody's seen the video of him ringing the bell. I saw the one video where he didn't even take a shower, so the first shower he took out of jail was in the Sixers facility.
I didn't see that. That's crazy.
Yeah, so it's like Kevin Hart, like, he's like drying himself off, and Kevin Hart's like taking a selfie with him or whatever. But yeah, I'm trying to think. I don't think I've seen that picture.
I'll have to send it to you. I'll find it and I'll send it to you.
Yeah, no, definitely send that to me. I don't think I've seen it.
Keeping on NBA, who do you like in the playoffs right now from the East and West?
I would probably pick the 76ers right now.
Yeah.
I for the last, I don't know how long now it is at this point, probably 8 years, it's been a very simple, they have LeBron on their team, so I'm picking them. I don't really know if that's good enough anymore. Like, Cleveland just seems to have more problems. That, no denying, LeBron's still the best player in the world, in my opinion, and he's going to get his 30, 35. I just don't trust that team's ability to defend. And if you can't defend, especially now with how teams are shooting threes and how teams can go on these offensive barrages, I just don't know if you can beat a good team like the Sixers 4 times out of 7. So I will give Cleveland the series against the Raptors. Like, I think they beat the Raptors. I can't pick them to beat the Sixers in good consciousness, even with having LeBron. So I'll pick the Sixers. Ask me the question about the Warriors once I know how healthy Steph Curry is. If Steph's not healthy, I'll take the Rockets. If Steph is back and he's the same Steph Curry as before,
Yeah.
I mean, the Warriors are the greatest offensive team in the history of basketball, so I'll take the Warriors.
Yeah, I think that's fair. This is an insane year for the city of Philadelphia, though, because we were just talking about how good, like, the Eagles won the Super Bowl, Villanova won the national championship, the Sixers are kind of a pick now to win the NBA Finals. Like, how crazy do you think it is to live in Philadelphia right now?
I mean, you could say they're going on, like, one of the greatest, like, 8-month, 12-month runs in, sports history
Yeah,
when you,
definitely.
really think about it. I mean, maybe the other comparison is Boston with the Red Sox World Series and the Patriots being the Patriots for the last 17 years. Like, maybe that's it. But, man, I can't think of too many other ones, at least not off the top of my head, where I'm like, man, that's been a better time to live in that city. Like, think about how incredible it was in Kansas City to be a fan. It was just the Royals good.
Yeah.
This was, Villanova, so they win the national championship, as you said, the Eagles, the Meek Mill, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You have the most exciting young team in the NBA.
Yeah, they just can't stop winning.
Yeah, no, I mean, every day, I imagine it's been really great as a sports fan. So, I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of something that's been better.
That's a 30 for 30 in the making coming up here.
Sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
What do you think about Kawhi Leonard skipping the playoffs?
That's a good question. I think it's pretty obvious, at least behind the scenes, that he and either Greg Popovich or he and the upper management for the Spurs are not on the same page. I don't expect Kawhi Leonard to be back on the team next season. I just don't know how you can bring him back. It just seems like it's such a fractured relationship. And as good as Kawhi Leonard is, if you have to pick between Kawhi Leonard and Greg Popovich, I think that's I think you're picking Greg Popovich.
Yeah. I think this really hurts his prospect to other teams of skipping on the playoffs. And if I'm another owner, I don't want a guy who's healthy but won't play in the playoffs because he has issues with, like, the training staff or something like that, whatever it was. I think this really is a bad move for him on his part.
Yeah, I mean, I think, though, if you're Cleveland and you're serious about keeping LeBron, I think you keep LeBron, you bring Kawhi in with the pick, and so you trade the Nets pick, you go grab Kawhi Leonard, and you give him another piece, and you hope that next year your three of LeBron, a healthy, remotivated Kawhi Leonard, and Kevin Love is enough.
Yeah, I could see that happening too.
We're going to go ahead and move to some Chiefs stuff. What do you think the Chiefs' biggest need is now?
I'd probably put it at, I think, third corner is probably it, and depends on how much you believe in Steven Nelson, but I'd probably always take, at least picking another corner, I'd probably go third corner or pass rush. I mean, they were 25th in the NFL last year in pass rush, so I think I was a little disappointed they didn't grab somebody this offseason that could get to the quarterback. If the Chiefs could find somebody as a rookie that could give you 4 to 6 sacks, I think you'll be in good shape for next year.
Do you see any trade deals coming up with the Chiefs going into, like, the draft?
I don't think they're going to make any trades, at least not high up, at least. I mean, you got to think they don't have the first-round pick. They pick in the middle of the second round with pick 54.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Therese actually was on our station, and he says he thinks at best they trade up to like 41, 42. I guess now that I say it, I could see them maybe trading one of the third-round picks that they got, or I guess that third-round pick that they got for Alex Smith, packaging that with their second-round pick to go up and get a guy they feel like they absolutely need.
Yeah.
Do you think Pat Mahomes will have what it takes this year to lead the team?
Yeah, I do. I think that Mahomes, I mean, if you're a rookie quarterback and you can't at least have some level of success in this system, I just don't know if there's a system you can be really successful in. So, like, I might be harder on Mahomes in his first year next year because you had a year already in this offense. Mm-hmm. They've given you Kareem Hunt. They've given you Travis Kelce. They've given you Tyreek Hill. They gave you Sammy Watkins. And let's see what they do in the draft. Like, man, you can't say that you got drafted in a Cleveland Browns situation and that you don't have the pieces. I mean, you got drafted into a team that should have a top 10 offense in the NFL next year. I'm not saying you got to go out there and throw 35 touchdowns and 12 picks, but you need to go out there and put a 26 touchdown, 13 interception season together. I mean, I just think you have all the weapons there to do it.
Yeah, I agree. I got one more question for you. How much barbecue do you think Andy Reid eats on a daily basis, like poundage-wise?
I actually don't think he probably eats as much barbecue as we think that he does. I would guess from just talking to him, he seems like a guy that loves cheeseburgers a lot more.
Oh, yeah.
So, like,
I could see
if
that.
you ask me in a week span, what does he eat more of, cheeseburgers or barbecue, I'd probably pick cheeseburgers. But, I mean, he does seem like the guy that we've all been at, like, you know, your family barbecue, and he's got a little bit of pulled pork on his plate, a little bit of brisket, a little bit of ham, a couple burnt ends, and 3 ribs, and he has coleslaw, potato salad, and baked beans all on his plate. Because he's like, I'm not getting up for seconds. Like he actually kind of comes off to me as that guy.
Yeah.
I think learning that Andy Reid just doesn't eat barbecue on a daily basis is kind of like one of those don't meet your heroes scenarios. Like one of those things that you know. What's your favorite barbecue spot in KC?
Gates. I'm a big Gates guy.
Good stuff.
I'm a big beef on bun, big mixed plate guy. I love the sauce, so Gates is my favorite.
Little Tech 9, mixed plate right there.
OG.
Yeah. Hell yeah. I love that song. Well, thanks for coming on, Carrington. Really appreciate it.
No, I appreciate you guys having me. Thanks so much.
We're with former Missouri Tiger TJ Moe. TJ, how you doing today?
Doing well. How are you guys?
Doing
Can't
good.
complain. So we were wondering here, how did you get your start into sports media after your playing career?
You know, I spent a lot of time talking to the media when I was playing. I think that probably is what sort of launched it from the start, because I did so many interviews and things. And then even on a national stage, we went down to my junior year. I was one of the 4 guys that went down to Big 12 Media Day in Dallas. And then I was one of the 3 guys that went to SEC Media Day, which I think is in Birmingham. And so you sort of get on a national scale a little bit, and if you're willing to say anything, most athletes, as you guys know, are not that fun to deal with, and they're not very smart.
Right.
And so there's a lot, you know, it's just like you talk to them because you have to, but not because they're that interesting. The vast majority of athletes don't have too many unique thoughts and don't have a whole lot to say. So if you find one that does, you usually latch on to them. So even after I got done playing, I was asked to go on a lot of radio shows. And Jim Edmonds, former St. Louis Cardinal, and Tim McKernan were doing a show on, it was CBS Sports 920. This is going back, I think, 2014. So they asked me to be a guest on the show, and I was. And then I talked to the producer after that, and eventually they just added me to the show. So that's how it was Edmonds, McKernan, and Moe show. And so we did that for about 6 months, and then I got out of radio for probably a year, and opened up a couple of Smoothie Kings down the South County area, St. Louis.
Nice.
And then Tim, who moved over to 590, called me one day. It was actually because I was filling in for the Fast Lane with Randy Carricker and Brad Thompson on 101.
Right.
And so DeMarco Farr had left, and they were sort of having guys try out for that. So in the middle of that, actually, he offered me and Cam Jansen an opportunity to do a show over on 590. So we took that, and that was November of 16. So we're going on a year and a half here.
Wow.
Of a show on 590, and then I've also got my podcast now that I started within the last month and a half.
It's not bad. You mentioned St. Louis a little bit there. Have you always been a big St. Louis sports fan?
Oh, yeah. I grew up, I wasn't born here. I was born in Indiana, actually, but I only lived there,
okay.
I think, for 6 months to a year, something like that. And so I grew up here. I grew up in the St. Charles County area. O'Fallon is where I live now. That's mostly where I've grown up. I went to Zuma West High School. So, now, especially now, I've gotten to know all the athletes. But back when I was growing up, you didn't know anybody. I wore number 28 because I love Marshall Faulk so much.
Yeah.
That's a good one, yeah.
Those 99 Rams were awesome. And that is where I kind of fell in love with football, was watching those guys. And so now, years later, I've met all those guys and talked to them, over the years when I was playing, and then even thereafter. Some of that was radio, but mostly because you just meet them at different charity events and things like that. They're all great dudes, and obviously you don't live in St. Louis without loving the Cardinals and the Blues.
Yeah, that's true.
So what was your feelings about the Rams moving once you saw that they were going to go to L.A.?
It was horrible. It makes you want to drop kick Cronky in the nutsack. And, it's just horrible. It just rips your heart out, especially because for people, how old are you guys?
21, 20.
Okay, so you guys are even a little bit young, but
Yeah.
so I'm 27. They won the Super Bowl when I was 9.
That's
it's like
exciting.
you think about your first memories.
Yeah.
You're 5, so if you guys were, 21, so you were too young, you remember the Super Bowl. You guys were like 3 years old, 2 and 3 years old. But I was 9. So it's like they moved to St. Louis in 95. We're not very good, but my dad and my mom and dad had season tickets. And so I remember, like, usually on my birthday, they would take me to the game, and we'd go sit up in the Edward Jones Dome, which I think was a TWA jump back then. And we go up and rolling. And I just, like I said, this is when they sucked. Like, you guys don't remember Tony Banks. He was like the worst quarterback in the league, and he was the Rams quarterback. And they were horrible. The only good player on the team was Isaac Bruce. And Isaac, I think it was 95, had like 1,700 yards. I mean, that was actually the most yards he ever had in his career. He was incredible. So I remember watching these guys. I had an Isaac Bruce jersey. And then 99 came around, because they were 4-12 in 98. Ooh. And then 99 came around. They're like, all right, you went and got Trent Green from the Redskins, and he's a Vianney kid who was like, man, finally you got a decent quarterback. You've been dealing with Tony Banks, who's horrible, and Chris Miller couldn't, walk 10 feet without getting a concussion. And so you had all these guys that had problems. And you had, it's like you had Robert Holcomb and some guys and only one good receiver. So you had basically a stagnant offense with average defense. That was not a good formula for winning games. So then you went and you traded for Marshall Faulk, which was the trade of the century. It was awesome. Yeah. And then you drafted for Torrey Holt. And then you had Trent Green. And then, you already had Orlando Pace, but you went and got Adam Tierman. Like, you had all these guys at the same time. You're like, man, this team could be awesome. And then Trent Green gets hurt, of course. And Kurt Warner steps in, and that's like this magical season. Okay, so I say all that to say, like, that was like this magical, historic, unbelievable moment for me as a 9-year-old. So on top of it being incredible, right, I was 9. So it seemed like that was like the greatest moment in the history of the world.
Superheroes, yeah.
Nothing else matters when you're 9. So I fall in love with the Rams there, and then, like, Kroenke moves the team. It rips your heart out. And honestly, it's hard to even look back at those memories as fondly as I did before now that they're gone. It really is tough.
We've got a guy on the show who's a big St. Louis Rams fan when they were there, and he is nodding along. Very sad, also.
Not a big Stan Kroenke fan.
No.
So before we get into your playing career at Missouri, we'll go ahead and talk about a little bit more St. Louis sports. What do you think about the Blues season this year?
I think that this is probably the softest Blues team in recent memory. I think you have a group of guys who, individually, you could say, like, you look at Vladimir Sobotka, like, he's a pretty tough dude. He didn't play tough this year. Right. In fact, the vast majority of the year, he was soft and not useful. And then, like, honestly, the epitome of the season was this. Alex Pietrangelo, they were playing the Dallas Stars, and this is during their 7-game losing streak. Probably, I don't know. I mean, it was before they made that last third. I think they won 6 or 7 in a row right after that. But this is in the midst of that 7-game losing streak. And Jamie Benn trips him, takes both his legs out, trips him, he lands flat on his back. And then Jamie Benn, who's the, if you guys remember, David Backus used to get into it with him all the time. He's the captain of the Dallas Stars. Yeah, so he sits down on top of him. And then Petro does nothing. And then Jamie Benn takes his face and slams it into the ice 3 times. And guess what happened? Nothing.
Right.
Nobody did a thing. And then the Blues went on to lose the game. So everybody's defending him, saying, of course, that, well, you can't take a stupid penalty there. Of course, you did the right thing. That's what a real captain should do. No, a real captain stands up and makes sure that everybody knows that his team is not going to get pushed around, him included. And that is what David Backus would have done. And that's, I think, what a lot of the captains around the league would do. And that's what tough teams do. In fact, you guys watched Sidney Crosby do that to PK Subban last year in the final. Awesome. That's the greatest moment in hockey history. And that's the type of thing that leads you to winning teams. Like, you have to have that toughness. The Blues had none of it. So unless they go get it, it's going to be similar to next year. In this league, you guys know this. You can get really far with skill in the regular season. Ask the Washington Capitals. Right. If you're not tough when it comes time for the playoffs, you're not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. No. Now, do you have a Stanley Cup prediction?
You know what? I hate Nashville more than anybody on the planet. In fact, I hate the Preds so much that I now hate the city. So Nashville in general is on my hate list. And so I hope somehow that place catches on fire and they don't go to the Stanley Cup, but they're so good they probably will. And I seriously, like, if you've ever watched Crosby and Evgeny Malkin play on the top 2 lines, it is really hard to bet against Pittsburgh. Vegas is actually, after that first round sweep, looks like they're quite a bit better than people thought.
Right.
And like you said, you're probably probably going to have the Preds coming out of the West, and it sucks. I hate them. But I hope, the only positive that can come from them coming out of the West is if, again, they get their hearts ripped out in the finals. I would like nothing more than that.
I just want you to know that I'm a pretty big Preds fan.
I
didn't precursor to that. Everybody does.
Look, we can all make good decisions. You happen to support a loser. You probably like Kroenke too.
I'm a Kansas City guy, so I don't like to put myself in that St. Louis business.
So you decided to skip right over the Blues, where we happen to be in a little bit better proximity, and just jumped right over to the Preds, the expansion team from '99. Well done.
Well, I tried my best.
We can't all make good decisions. That's true. What do you think about the Cardinals' start of the season?
Carlos Martinez drives me nuts, and that is because he's got talent to be a top. He's borderline top 5. That's the top 2 of those guys that's done top. But I think he's got talent to be a top 10 pitcher, not just in the National League, in the entire league. A top 10 pitcher overall, and when he's in an A game, he's as good as anybody. But the dude lacks focus so frequently that last year his problem was like second, third inning, he would just have a bad inning, and then he'd be nails. He'd go 7 every game. He'd be nails for 6 out of 7, but he'd let up 3 runs in the second. So it's like his ERA is good and all that stuff. Like, hey, he's a good pitcher, but would always lack that focus. He didn't even try in spring training this year. If you guys remember, Maddox came out and basically said, yeah, we're just doing a lot of work in the backfield. Basically, they were hiding into these sucks so bad, and he wasn't focused in the spring. And then he came out and laid an egg in his first start.
Right.
And he for the first time, he doesn't have issues with control. And he couldn't hit the strike zone. Well, then he dials it in, and he's thrown gems ever since. He drives me nuts because of that. When you have a guy with that much talent, you just want him to dial it in because he's a Cy Young candidate, no doubt, when he gets it dialed in. Outside of that, if Matt Carpenter is not moved to the 1 spot, I'm going to lose my mind.
Yeah. I kind of feel the same way you do about Carlos Martinez. It's kind of with Yordano Ventura, though. That guy was such a loose cannon, and you never knew what he was going to do. He was probably going to get in a fight, though.
You know what, though? I'm for entertainment, so whoever wants to fight, I'm up for that.
Yeah. So did you like that Yachty fight the other day?
You know what? I posted that exactly. I said if Alex Pietrangelo had this attitude, the Blues would be in the playoffs.
Oh, that's very true, yeah.
Good take. So we're all football guys here. How excited are you for football coming back on? With the spring games coming and everything, what are you feeling?
Yeah, so I went to the spring game. I watched none of it at all. I actually went just to socialize, so they have a players' reunion. So I went and saw the boys. That was a lot of fun. But I did get to sit down and talk to Coach Dooley and Coach Odom for a while. Dooley, I understand a lot of people thought that was an underwhelming signing or hire, I suppose, because of Tennessee, and that's how you guys saw it turn out the way it did. But that dude is brilliant. I mean, listen to him talk football. I didn't sit down with him for that long, but holy smokes is that dude smart. That doesn't mean he's going to be an all-star here, but I'm telling you, the dude is really, really smart. So the stuff we sat down and talked about, as far as X's and O's and trading ideas and that sort of thing, granted, I don't know that much. He knows a lot. My defense of him from the start was this. You don't work for Nick Saban for 7 years without being really, really smart, of which he is. So, and then the other thing with Odom is he's going to have to get the defense together early this year. Last year, in each of the last 2 years, they've started really slow, sucked a lot, and then they've gotten it together towards the end of the year. So I think what Odom's going to be able to do this year, I hope, is basically pass off the entire offense to Coach Dooley, who has been a head coach himself at multiple places, knows the offense in and out. He's not going to have to worry about that. That's going to be Dooley's side of the ball to deal with, and Odom's going to be able to focus entirely on the defense and game planning and play calling and all that stuff. I think that's going to matter. So that is your hope. And look, they're going to struggle on the back end. I think Adam Sparks is going to be decent at corner this year. They have Bledsoe, who came around towards the end of last year. He's going to be a decent safety for him. But you lost both your safeties, and really you've got to figure out what's happening in the corner too. But I tell you what, and I said this too. I was on Sirius XM Radio the other day with Peter Burns and Marcus Spears, and they were asking about the Mizzou defense. There are 2 guys that, as a tandem, will be as good or better than every team in the country, and that is the Mizzou interior defensive line, Terry Becker Jr. and Jordan Elliott. Yeah. Those 2 guys, I'm not kidding, stand them next to the guys at Alabama and they'll beat them. I promise you. Those 2 guys are as good as anybody in the country as a tandem. I'm not kidding. You're looking at minimally 1 first rounder. It could be 2.
Wow.
Yeah. that's a rarity. And you got to have Trey Williams coming around on the edge too. He missed spring with a shoulder injury, but he was coming around towards the end of last year. The good news is this. Historically, Mizzou, we call it D-line zoo. It's because they've had Alden Smith and Michael Sam and Shane Ray and Marcus Golden and on and on and on. All those guys, Coney Ely. But there's, like, name me the good safeties. In 2007 and 2008, William Moore and Pick Brown, they were both All-American caliber players. After them, you can hardly name the safeties because they haven't been good. They're like average to below average players, almost all of them. And I would say similarly for the corners, E.J. Gaines has been like the only good corner, Arian Penton as well. Those two guys, but E.J. especially. Outside of that, corner play average. But it didn't matter because you had so much pressure on the quarterback and in the backfield that, 2014, I think they led the SEC in tackles for loss. I mean, those teams were dominant, and it was along the defensive front. So if they can match that or come close to it, then I think you worry a whole lot less about what's going on in the back end.
Yeah, we saw on Twitter that Claire McCaskill made that just ignorant tweet, and we saw that you had a little bit of something to say about it.
Yeah, I said, explain all your people. She tweeted out that she was really going to miss sitting on the Rock M. She grew up there as a little girl watching all those games. Of course, I notified her that those Rock M's will live forever in her heart, and of course on the other end of the field where they've always been. And okay. So this is politics in general. I don't know if you guys like politics. I really enjoy them. I am more of a conservative, so I don't agree with Claire McCaskill on much. However, we can both agree that we like Mizzou football. And this is what all politicians do, right or left or more libertarian or whatever. Basically what they do is they pander to the most amount of people they can around election time. The 2018 midterms are coming up, and she's trying to kind of look like somebody that is a regular person. She is not a regular person. She probably hasn't been to Missouri in 5 years. So she obviously wasn't at the game. She sort of pretended that was her picture. That wasn't her picture because if you were at the game, you obviously, like that picture was taken from the other side from where she normally sits. So she normally sits on the alumni side, of which you look to the left and there's the Rock M. She's sitting on the student side and she's like, oh my gosh, where'd they go?
That's wild.
We'll have to send her a compass or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, good old Claire. Nice try, though.
So do you think that Drew Lock made the right decision to come back to Mizzou for a senior year?
Yeah, I do, because he was not going to be one of the – honestly, look, the way it is right now, he probably wasn't going to be one of the first 5 quarterbacks taken. And, it's depending on how much they value Lamar Jackson. I was just talking about this on my radio show, actually. When you look at the guys feasibly, and I don't think this will happen, but feasibly, this could be the first draft in recent history where the top 4 picks are all quarterback. Right. And that's probably predicated on if Josh Allen goes first. Because the Browns went Josh Allen, then the Giants are probably going to go Sam Darnold, then the Jets go Josh Rosen, and then the Browns have the 4th pick, which is probably for sale for somebody who wants to come up and get Baker Mayfield. And if you're afraid you're not going to get a quarterback, don't you at least think about it? Mm-hmm. So you could see all 4 of those quarterbacks come off the board in the first 4 picks. It would just be incredible. Look, Drew Lock, I think, is going to be a better pro than Baker Mayfield. He'll be a better pro than Lamar Jackson, but you guys have all paid attention to the NFL for a long time. They don't do a lot of rational things. Sure. So I think right now, if you're making a list, Drew Lock is probably the top quarterback prospect of 2019.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I agree. Who was your favorite team to play against when you were in college back in the day?
Oh, man, to play against? It was fun beating Kansas.
Nice. Always.
3-0 against them at Arrowhead, yeah. That was a good one. I enjoyed playing against Nebraska. It was loud and crazy. I did not beat Nebraska, unfortunately. Lost in 2009 and 2010. But, that was probably those. It was a lot of fun going to all the SEC places. Like, going to South Carolina was awesome. Going to the Swamp down in Florida was awesome. Of course, we lost both those games. But, like going to Tennessee, that was cool. Getting to see all these SEC stadiums that hold 70, 80, 90, 100, like Tennessee was 102,000. That stuff's pretty cool, just a unique look at all of that. But as far as, like, just beating teams, just anytime you get to beat up on Kansas, that makes life better.
Who was your favorite quarterback to play with?
Blaine. Blaine liked to throw me the ball a lot, which makes my life more fun, yes. I like to. And Blaine had honestly, Blaine was one of the guys that would step off the bus with an FU attitude to the other team, which makes winning a lot easier. If you want to be best friends with the guys on the other team, you can wave and smile. That's not beneficial for our campaign. So I can roll with Blaine any day of the week.
So you had a play. I remember I was at this game against San Diego State. They call it Moe's Miracle. What was the emotion during that game and everything?
It's kind of overwhelming, to be honest with you. That is one of those plays, obviously, you don't ever forget. And I remember the lead up to it. We should not have won that game. If you guys remember,
right.
The running back on the other team was Ronnie Hillman, who was a second-round pick for the Denver Broncos that next year. He had an 80-yard touchdown and a 90-yard touchdown, and they were playing a no-deep cover zero defense, meaning they blitzed everybody and covered everybody else man-to-man. And they played that virtually the whole game, and we just kept missing our shots. And if you hit your shots, you beat them by 25. If you miss your shots, you're losing in the fourth quarter, and we were missing our shots. And it was kind of rainy and lightning, and it wasn't good. Anyway, we got the ball back because Ronnie Hillman ran out of bounds like an idiot, and then they should have just ran timeout. They didn't. So he ran out of bounds. We got the ball back at the 12-yard line. Jarrell Jackson, we ran a switch route. Jarrell caught one over the middle at, I don't know, he's probably 16, 17 yards downfield, and then fumbled the ball. If he didn't fumble it, he probably scores. I mean, he's off and running. That dude can run for one. So he fumbled and then fell right on top of the ball. So then we go down. We are at the 32-yard line, and the initial play call was I was supposed to be the last read. Basically, we were going through, sending three guys vertical routes on the right side, and then the guy outside of me to the left. I was lined up in the slot to the left. Was also going vertical. I was supposed to run a pivot route, meaning I just run about 4 yards inside and kind of stand there and float outside. And then we changed the play. We kind of got a tip off and read on what their defense was going to be. They were sending everybody, so we changed it. We called it no deep number 2, and which was you call it Liz protection, meaning all the linemen roll to the left and pick up their guy, let the guy on the right side run free. Blaine Gabbert takes 3 steps to the left and throws me a little out. Blaine actually threw me a little bit inside, which I don't think was on purpose, but it allowed me to kind of front up the safety who was screaming down. Took a step back. He went screaming by. Then I was trying to run out of bounds. Jarrell Jackson, who had already been run out of bounds, came back inside, drilled his guy, and we were off and running.
Yeah, I was going to say, it looked like when you watch the play, it looks like it was like almost a design play to get you out of bounds, stop the clock again and set something up. Did you see that safety screaming down there? Is that what made you decide to make a move and cut upfield?
It's more reaction, really. When you're in a game that fast, there's not a whole lot of planning that goes on when something happens like that. So I caught the ball. Ideally, if you're drawing up that play, he throws it outside of my body, and then I make sure I get a foot down, and it's a 6-yard gain. So that's how you want that play to work. Instead, he threw it inside a little bit, so I had to kind of pivot. Then, at that point, you got to make sure you don't get tackled because time's running out. So that's where you just make a move to make sure the guy doesn't touch you. Then you're thinking, okay, get out of bounds. Then you're like honestly, when I made the last move to stay in bounds, my thought was, it's okay if I get tackled right here. I can manhandle my way out of bounds. If somebody wants to tackle me here, I'm not going down. I'm close enough that I can get out. And then I just kept running.
I was actually watching that video as you were describing it, and it was insane how accurate it was. I don't know, that was in 2010, so it would have been, 8 years ago? I'm impressed by how well.
No, thank you. That's not one of those things you forget.
Yeah, I can see that.
So, real quick question. You played in both the Big 12 and the SEC. What do you think is a better conference, Big 12 or SEC, both from a player's perspective and from a fan's perspective?
Oh, dude, the SEC dwarfs the Big 12. Big 12 is not going to be playing football in 10 years. I'm not kidding about that. There will be no Big 12 conference in 10 years. And look, Oklahoma's awesome. Texas is awesome. Outside of that, though, everybody else is just whatever. And they can play decent football. I think Oklahoma State will land on their feet, But it's just not a power football conference. They're fine. TCU's done well in recent years. Texas Tech has been okay here and there. But in reality, that conference is going to dissipate at some point, and they're all going to be joining the other conferences. And it's going to be a Power 4 in time. Probably a Power 4 of 16 super conferences. And the SEC is on another level. I mean, I told you I went to the Big 12 Media Day, and there were 300 credited media members. I went to the SEC Media Day the next year, and there were over 1,200. Now there's well over 1,600 media members that go down to SEC Media Day. I mean, it is an absolute show. And, I mean, think about it. Yesterday, I was on an all SEC, this could never happen in St. Louis. I was on a radio show down in Atlanta that only talks about SEC football all year round, and the guy stays in business because so many people care. You can never have that here.
That's very true.
Feinbaum show.
Did you get to watch the Combine this year, the NFL Combine?
I watched parts of it. That to me, there's a few people that like that. I cared about it more when the Rams were in town.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's fine. After experiencing it and knowing what it's like I get it. It's so overrated. And this is coming from a guy that killed the Combine. I mean, I finished first in 4 out of the 7 drills. I ran a slow 40, but outside of that, the Combine was really good for me. It's just so overrated because you're running around in shorts. It's not football.
Yeah. Yeah, you're trying to find out how good a football player is by watching him not play football.
Exactly right. A bunch of dudes that run around and say, look, I'm fast. Now, of course, if you hit the guy, good luck. But,
sure.
I can run fast.
You had like you said, you had a really stellar Combine. Why do you think that you went undrafted then if you had such a good Combine?
I'm slow as hell. I ran I think a 4.74, and that's not going to get you drafted. The other thing is, my career had it peaked as a sophomore. If it would have gone the other way, I think I probably would have got drafted. But we changed the offense. James' skills didn't match it with my skills very well, James Franklin. And so I went from 92 catches to 54 to 40. That's not going to get you drafted, especially, I was a volume guy. I was going to be a possession guy that can make plays that you had to be that you had to make. Now, I still had a chance. If I wouldn't have got hurt, I tore my Achilles in 2013. I had a chance with the Patriots because that year, even if I sucked, that year, Danny Amendola was there. He tore his groin and got a concussion, missed a bunch of games. Julian Edelman was coming off back-to-back Jones fractures in his foot, had surgery as soon as he started walking around again, broke it again, had surgery again. Wes Welker had his contract was up. He was not re-signed that year. Aaron Hernandez went to prison. Rob Gronkowski tore his ACL. I mean, I'm just getting going. Everybody was hurt. So even if I could walk and chew a little bit of gum, then I think I'd have been on the field.
Now, you talk about with your time with the Patriots. How much time did you get to spend one-on-one with Bill Belichick?
Bill, he's not a huge one-on-one guy. I mean, enough that, sit in a room and get to know him a little bit. He's very dry sense of humor. I actually think he's a good dude. I think people don't give him credit, everybody. But, he is very, very focused. And honestly, he teaches a lot of life lessons that you take with you. I remember a lot of his one-liners that I'll be talking to people and just say, Belichick would say this, and this pretty much applies. And he is interested in you growing as a person as much as a player, which is very useful.
I think a lot of his former players say that he really they learned a lot from him, not just football, but life, where you don't really see that in the media. The media kind of plays him out to be this robot who doesn't want to deal with anything, but I think it's just because he doesn't want to deal with the media.
I don't blame him. He's not very nice to the media. Have you ever watched the press conference? I wouldn't be very nice to him either.
You said that you were a Rams fan, and obviously they've moved to L.A. Do you have a favorite team now?
Oh, yeah, I cheer for the Patriots. I know you guys probably hate that, but
no.
They paid my paycheck for a year, so go Pats.
Hey, that makes sense.
It's not hard to cheer for the Patriots, too.
Yeah, no kidding. If you like winning, go ahead and do it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on, TJ. We really appreciate it.
You got it, dude. Thanks for having me.
I'm here with Bob Fescoe of 610 Radio, host of Fescoe in the Morning. Bob, how are you doing today?
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Hey, not a problem. That your show's on 610 Sports in Kansas City, goes from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. How do you like that 6 a.m. slot?
You know what? I love it. And it's one of those things where people say, do you ever get used to getting up at that hour? And my answer is, no, you never get used to getting up at 4:30 in the morning, but I would rather have it either way because it just frees you up to do so many other things, and being a dad and having the opportunity to be around my kids all the time is perfect. So I love it, man. It's great.
Yeah, and I saw you talked about Travis Kelce on your show today, got a little fired up. Why don't you tell the people who are listening now who didn't really get to listen to the show what that was all about?
He was on a show on the Viceland channel the other day and was talking about the TV show Catching Kelce. And he said the show came out, and word of the show came out the day before he signed his big $43, $45 million contract with the Chiefs, and the Chiefs weren't happy with him doing the TV show. And my whole philosophy is these guys have a very short window of time to play in the NFL, and in the NFL, they'll cut you tomorrow and owe you no money, and they don't really treat these players like people. They like commodities, and they've got to use this platform to try to find something else to do once football's over, and Travis Kelce was doing that. And for the Chiefs to be mad at him for doing that, I think is a little short-sighted on their part because it brings a lot of brand recognition to the Chiefs, but it also gives Travis Kelce and other players something to do and fall back on once football's over because football doesn't last a real long time.
Right, we'll keep on the Chiefs topic, too. I'm kind of confused what they're doing this offseason with the defense. It seems like they've cut a lot of guys, but you thought at the beginning they were getting rid of attitudes, but then they draft a little bit of questionable attitudes in the draft. So what are your thoughts on the Chiefs draft this year?
Well, I don't know any of the players they can do because, quite honestly, I don't care now because they're more part of the future than they are part of what's going to happen right now. And I've been saying for the last couple of months that I'm looking at this as a 32-game season, really this year plus next year. And then January of 2020, once they reach the postseason, that's when this team should start having success. And I like the draft because they got defensive players. They obviously need help on the defensive side of the ball. You trade Marcus Peters, you cut Derek Johnson, Tom Ali moves on. There's a lot of new faces on that defense, and you've got to get young in the NFL. And I like the fact that they looked at that when we need defensive players. We got a lot of good talent on offense right now. We need talent on defense, and they got all defense. So for that, I love the draft.
Yeah, and their offense, they added Sammy Watkins, a powerful offensive weapon. Do you think that offense will be able to keep up with pace, especially with plugging Pat Mahomes in?
My only concern is that they're not going to have enough time on the field because the defense won't be able to stop anybody to get off.
Yeah.
I want to see 75 plays a game. I want to see Mahomes air it out. I want to see Sammy Watkins in the red zone catching touchdowns. I want to see how they utilize him and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce and, Kareem Hunt. I mean, they've got so many weapons, and you want to see so many different guys do so many different things. You just hope the defense doesn't get bogged down where they can't stop anybody, and the opposition just running all over top of them, taking time off the clock and preventing them getting on the field. That's what I would do if I was the coach. I'd grab a running back every week I was playing the Kansas City Chiefs and just run it down their throat, and make you stop them because they've shown over the years they can't stop the run all that much.
Yeah, that's true. What did you think about the acquisition, or not really the acquisition, the drafting of Breeland Speaks?
It fills obviously a need for this organization and anybody that can be a big body and somebody that can make a play in the running game and somebody who can stop, the opposition because they haven't had those guys in a while. I mean, you've had the running backs from every team in this league run all over the top of the Chiefs. And then when you face a good running back, they really run all over the top of the Kansas City Chiefs. So if you can draft guys that know how to tackle, that know how to make plays, that know how to plug gaps and plug holes and get up there and get ugly and get dirty and get physical, I'm all for that. I just love guys that want to go out there and not necessarily become superstars, but want to be part of a team and play ugly and play dirty and make the plays that need to be made, because that was what was lacking in that playoff game. I mean, nobody made plays that needed to be made, and they ended up losing a 15-point lead.
Yeah. What do you think is the big real gap for the Chiefs that they really, if they're gonna win that second round playoff game, get to the AFC Championship, that they're really gonna have to improve on this year?
Well, I think number one, it's the running game, but now number two, it's your defensive backs. So who's out there right now besides Eric Berry that anybody knows? I mean, right. There's a couple of names out there that they acquired, obviously in the trade and then picking up the dude from the Raiders and whatnot. But you don't even really know who's playing next to Eric Berry right now. And we don't even really know how good Eric Berry's going to be coming back off an Achilles injury. Those are tough injuries to bounce back. And Eric's not getting any younger, so I'm interested to see how he's going to be and how he's going to perform this year and how healthy he is. I don't have any doubts. I mean, the dude beat cancer, so I feel pretty good about Eric Berry. Yeah. There's going to be Daniel Sorensen, and, you lose Ron Parker. And I know, people go, whatever, but Ron Parker was still a pretty good defensive back. He was still pretty safety back there. Chiefs when he was running with Eric Berry. So it's going to be real interesting to see those defensive backs and what they're capable of doing. But I also think the pass rush, who's rushing the quarterback this year? That's what they're going to have to answer. Is Steve Ford going to be able to stay healthy for an entire season? Never has. Is John Houston going to earn any money since signing that big contract? Hasn't so far. So, you got two players that should be able to get after the quarterback, but there's still big question marks as well.
Now, they cut Raheem Nunez-Roches the other day, and he signed with the Colts. What did you think about them cutting him? I was kind of confused by that move.
I think we all were, because I look at him again as depth along that defensive line and a guy that has shown some promise. I mean, some of the preseason games he's had, I know it's preseason, but he gets to the quarterback, man. He makes plays. He looked exciting. He looked fun. And it just seems like they're trying to weed out a lot of the Dorsey guys for whatever reason. I don't know. I mean, you treat Peters. Now, not that Nunez-Roches is the same as Dorsey, but a guy who can play a position where you need depth and where you need a lot of folks to be able to play, and you're going to need guys over the course of the season. It just seemed odd, especially a guy that was here for a while and not making any money, and that they just signed or gave a tender to in the offseason that prevented him from going somewhere else. So I don't understand that one, and you hope that's one where there's probably more behind the scenes than we know, but who knows? It just could be another type of move where they decide to get rid of Marcus Peters for no reason, too.
Yeah, you mentioned kind of like the old Chiefs regime. The Chiefs really got drained from Doug Peterson to Chris Ballard to John Dorsey, and they just seem like, just front office-wise, they haven't really been able to recover.
Well, they brought in a couple of guys, or a guy, I should say, from the Eagles, and obviously you win a Super Bowl, you want to poach that organization.
Right.
But it's Matt Nagy, too, going to Chicago, and I think he's the best that this team is going to have, and it's going to be interesting to see how Andy Reid really utilizes his new offensive coordinator and Eric Bieniemy, and whether or not it's he lets him be involved in the offense, or he just kind of takes advantage of him because he's a young guy in that coordinator position for the first time. And I hope Eric Bieniemy can keep Andy Reid in check, because Andy Reid's biggest enemy is Andy Reid. So I think that's going to be interesting to see that dynamic there. You lose him, you lose Brad Childress. Him being Nagy, Childress is gone, Doug Peterson. That's three big-time offensive minds over the last, 3 seasons now that you've lost. And you haven't really replaced those guys. It's not like you went out and hired guys from another staff or anything like that. They just promoted guys from within, and I think they're kind of at their level of promotion right now.
Yeah. Before we move on to across the Truman Sports Complex, what's your prediction for the Chiefs season this year?
I did the schedule like everybody does the day it comes out. I got them winning 11 games, but I'm not looking at this as what they have to do record-wise. I don't care what they do record-wise. I want to see this defense play good. I want to see Pat Mahomes look like a 16-game starter like he did in the one game. I want to see everybody take their game to a new level and get better. I liken it to the 2011 Royals. Not worried about the record. We're worried about what these guys are doing and how much better they got from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, and then carry that over into 2019. And I'll start making judgments on this team record-wise once we hit January of 2020 and into the playoffs.
Yeah. You mentioned the Royals, 2011 Royals, they were all trying to get better. It seems like that's what these Royals are trying to do, is just get better. Go ahead.
No, I said that's what you got to do at this point in the year. I mean, you're 13 wins in a 45-game schedule already, or whatever it is, and it's just about getting better, man. It's about getting better and improving and letting some of these young guys play and letting them, learn from making mistakes right now. So in 2020, 2021, when you're out there ready to compete and get back to the postseason, these guys are seasoned and they're ready to go. And that's the way you have to look at this year for the Royals.
It's kind of tough to see, especially losing Eric Hosmer. Did you really expect the Royals to get off to just this slow of a start?
No, I thought they would be a lot better. And really, when you look at what's been disappointing, it's Duffy, it's Jason Hamill, it's Ian Kennedy. I mean, those are the three big guys in your rotation, and those guys have really scuffled. I mean, Kennedy's given up 14 runs in his last 2 starts. Hamill has been, not that great, and Duffy, for whatever reason, he's having a tough time getting out of this funk right now. So those are 3 guys that you look at that you shouldn't have to worry about, that you really have had to worry about. Now, the bullpen wasn't great at the beginning of the year, but they're starting to find their way a little bit, and, they're doing some good things out of the bullpen, and some young guys are starting to learn, like that Bert Smith, that Rule 5 guy with his hair. And maybe he's a guy that's, part of your future bullpen in 2020 and 2021. And you look at what Junis and Scoglin are able to do in the rotation from time to time, and Soler is playing lights out right now. So there are some really positive points about this team that you can take away. And those are the things you have to look at and build upon to get through a 162-game schedule right now.
I think if you really look at their lineup isn't what's killing them. It looks like a solid lineup when they march those 8 guys, 9 guys out onto the field.
Yeah, it does, and that's the thing. I mean, Mike Moustakas is the free agent steal not only of this year, of the decade for what they're paying him. We talked about Soler knocking the cover off the ball. Alex Gordon seems to have found it again. Whit Merrifield's as steady as they get. Salvador Perez is doing well back in the lineup. I mean, you've got some guys now out there that are producing for you and doing good things in the lineup. Now, they haven't been great with runners in scoring position, and obviously you want to do better in that department, but I don't think it's an offensive reason as to why they're losing a lot of games. I think a lot of it has been starting pitching right now for this team.
Yeah, I think pitching has a lot to do with it. I mean, it's basically a third of the game, hitting, catching. So, What did you think about Whit Merrifield's quote about these guys about losing, and he doesn't like losing?
Yeah, I like to hear that. You want to hear every once in a while that it bothers them as much as it bothers fans. And I know this year shouldn't bother fans a whole heck of a lot because they are beginning that rebuilding process right now. They're trying to grow the organization. But you want to hear the players say it sucks. You want to hear the players say losing isn't it. You want to know that they're feeling it like Whit Merrifield was. And it's always good to hear that. And some people say, well, what are they going to do to turn it around? Well, I think we're kind of past that time. If you're still holding out hope that all of a sudden this ball club is going to turn it around, I think that's false hope right now. I think what you have to look at is, are guys improving? Is Jorge Soler better at the end of the year than he was at the beginning of the year? Can you count on Alex Gordon again? Where's Skoglund going to factor in? Where's, Junis going to factor into this? How about some of those young guys out of the bullpen? Where are they going to factor in moving forward? Those are the things you have to look at right now and judge the season based on individual performances by the young guys that could be part of the future of this organization, as opposed to worrying about wins and losses. Because I think if you're worrying about wins and losses this year, boy, you're really going to stress yourself out.
Yeah, you sure will. You're going to wear yourself thin. You mentioned Danny Duffy earlier about how he hasn't really pitched that well. He's admitted it open to the public. What do you think about his approach there, and what do you think's really gone wrong for him?
I think Danny's biggest problem is he can't let the past go. And instead of going out and having a fresh start each day or every fifth day, he goes out there trying to make up for what he didn't do that last start. And that's Danny's personality. Danny does not want to let Kansas City down. He wants to be a Royal. He wants to be part of this organization. He wants to do everything to win here in Kansas City. And I think the losing gets to him more than it's ever gotten any other athlete I've ever seen. I mean, he takes it really, really hard because he wants to do so well. And that sometimes can get in the way. When you want to do something so bad, sometimes you try too hard. George Brett used to say all the time, you got a case of the try too hards. And sometimes you go out there and you try to hit a 5-run home run or strike out 6 guys with one pitch. Those are things that are impossible to do. So Danny has to forget about the past. He has to have a bad memory and just worry about the future. And I think if he does that, I think he's going to be okay. But he has to get back to thinking that way.
On the flip side of that, Jake Junis has really been a very impressive pitcher so far, and I think it shows just what talent he has.
Yeah, it really does, and it also shows, I sit here at my desk and I've got the prospect handbook every year, and I keep it close by, and you look through it and you say, all right, where are some of these guys ranked, and who are some of these guys in this prospect handbook right now, for the Kansas City Royals, and you look at some of the guys that are there, and Nick Prado not ready, Khalil Lee, Josh DeMont, Skoglund's number 5 on this list, Dozier, Foster Griffin. You start to go through and you're like, all right, where is our guy from this year? Where is somebody who's up at the big league level right now that's doing real well, and you don't find them listed in that prospect handbook. And those are the guys that you really have to count on, because not always are you going to get your top 30 prospects to do good things. I mean, Salvador Perez wasn't a top 30 prospect. Danny Duffy wasn't a top 30 prospect. They weren't even top 100 prospects in baseball, and they came up and became cornerstones for this organization to turn it around. So you have to count on some of these guys like a Jake Junis to come up here, to this level and do some good things and start to count on some guys that maybe you weren't counting on before. And that's really where you make a team. And so when people say the Royal system is taxed and they don't have anybody down there, they may not have anybody down there right now and ready to go that and maybe not anybody that they were counting on years ago to be up at the big league level with things, but they got guys that are doing some good things at the big league level right now that nobody were counting on. And that's a pretty good haul if you're the Kansas City Royals. So you've got some guys in the system that are producing right now.
So for the Royals this season, we know it's not going to be about wins, but where do you think they're going to end up? Do you think I'll set the over/under at about 70
for wins?
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to say the over on that, but the math isn't working right now. I just don't want them to lose 100 right now.
Yeah.
You want to stay away from that 100-loss mark, but the worse you do, the better draft pick you get, and the Royals have shown that when they pick fairly high, they get a Hosmer, they get a Moustakas. I mean, those are the first 2 draft picks that Dayton Moore had in this system, and they proved to be the building blocks to bring this team a world championship. So, I like the odds of them drafting high, and I know they're really reinvesting themselves into scouting and development and trying to make this ball club a winner again.
I think some people forget, since they were just recently a winner, that I think they admitted really that they're going to commit to the rebuild. So
yeah, and it happens to every team. I mean, baseball is so hard they keep a cyclical pace. Like even the Yankees didn't do it for a while. You know, they weren't in the World Series and postseason every year. You have those runs where you do well, and then you come back down, and then you do well, and then you come back down. I mean, that's kind of the way that baseball is built, and kind of the way that baseball, you know, has gone for years. You know, it's just that way. Every team does it. The Astros will eventually come back down. The good thing is, so many teams try to do what the Royals did, where they go out and they win a world championship based on their minor league system. Mm-hmm. And then you have teams like the Cleveland Indians, the Detroit Tigers, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Could you imagine being a Pirates fan and having all those years where you make the playoffs and get knocked out in the wild card round? The Royals accomplished their goal. What the Royals did was truly spectacular. And in the modern age of baseball, since 1994 when the strike was, there's only one team in a television market 20 or below to make it and to win the World Series, and it's the Royals. And they did it in back-to-back years. And it goes to show you just how difficult it is to make the World Series, but even how much more difficult it is to win the World Series. And to go to back-to-back World Series in this day and age is almost unprecedented in baseball.
Right. Do you think Kansas City will ever get a basketball team?
Yeah. I just don't think there's enough money, enough corporate support in this town right now. We've got 3 really good franchises, and we've got colleges so close that everybody supports. I just don't know that the appetite – I think the appetite is there, but I don't know that the financial, you know, needs are there. And Sprint Center does so well by itself with so many other events. Having an anchor tenant will only prevent them from having great concerts and events down there that I know they love having, and I know what Kansas City loves having too.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I don't think you think of the families that are the owners. You think of the Glass family. You think of the Kaufman family. And who owns Sporting Kansas City? I can't think of that right now.
Guys over at Cerner, you know, the Cerner Corporation, they're in it. So, my whole take has always been, I don't want one of our current teams to have to suffer because we're adding in another team. And I just don't think that the pie is big enough for another team in this town.
I agree with you. We had Carrington Harrison on the podcast earlier this year, and we asked him this question. Yeah. We said, what's your favorite barbecue spot?
There are so many different ones. Smokehouse Barbecue is the best beans in Kansas City. You're not going to find better beans than Smokehouse Barbecue. And I think everybody has their own spot for whatever it is that they like, you know, whether it's burnt ends at LC's. I know a lot of people like that, and, you know, pulled pork, and, you know, there's so many different spots so you can get that. But my go-to is always Smokehouse. I love the beans. My kids crave them all the time, and when you have a 7- and 8-year-old and they crave something other than a hot dog, it's a great situation to be in. You know?
Well, Bob, thanks for coming on and talking Kansas City sports. Love talking to you.
You got it, my man. Thanks for having me, and thanks for calling.
Yeah, no problem.